Pro Audio Secrets, a show that helps you to find your own voice in sound.
This is brand new.
How do you manage your...
I currently have
You then started to buy microphones, or...
So I have about a...
Wow.
The work is super standardized. So like you have to do...
And do you also agree that it is useful to...
But I think you gain a few extra points by...
You could also do other stuff with that. For example...
There you go. Yeah.
In this episode of Pro Audio Secrets podcast, I talked to Tyler Gillis from Canada. He's running a company called Aftertouch Audio. He's only 30 years old and he's already 10 years in. He records gun sound libraries. He has a post-production service that is going on. He does many things. He has the entrepreneurial mindset and is also a very good freelancer on his own. Let's welcome him and dive into the episode. Tyler, thank you very much for making the time. I really appreciate it that we can have this conversation. I know you run a company out of Canada and you are in the sound business. And can you maybe introduce yourself and what you do more in particular, and what is your mission in all of this?
So my name is Tyler. I run a company called Aftertouch Audio. We started off doing predominantly just post-production sound, but now we're kind of branching out into field recording and a little bit of Foley here and there. And now we're doing all kinds of stuff, audiobooks and other projects that I can't get into, apparently.
And you started that company?
Yeah. Yeah, started it 10 years ago.
And can you give us a little bit of an overview, the scope of your company? Do you have employees? What is the structure behind all Aftertouch Audio?
Aftertouch Audio is just me. I don't have any employees per se. Most of what I do is like contract-based work. So if I have something that I need done, what I'll do is I'll reach out to some of my contacts that I needed in the industry, and I'll hire them to do backgrounds, or I'll hire them to do dialogue editing, record pieces of a sound effects library, design assets for me. Basically, if I take on a big show, if I can do it all by myself, I'll do it all by myself. If I need... if the deadline does not require me to do it all by myself, I'll hire a piece, and then I'll just keep piecemealing it until I have a team.
Interesting. Somehow I remembered going through your website, seeing a team displayed there. So that's maybe why I was led to that question, like, how many employees do you have?
Yeah, it's just me. The people that are on the website are people that I've worked with, that I have running contracts with. So essentially, those are the resources that I frequently have access to, or I have access to on a regular basis. And then I have a ton of other people outside of that, but those are the people that I tend to work with the most.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the whole field of audio, and what led you to become a freelancer and a company owner?
I started off as a composer. I went to school for music. I graduated with a music degree. And then what ended up happening was I got into doing film scoring. I worked for a really big sample library company. So we started doing a lot of that stuff. And then what ended up happening was I wanted to work as a composer. So the problem with getting into the music industry is if you search sound design on YouTube, you get a lot of music-based tutorials.
Oh, really?
So there's a significantly higher competition for music than there is for sound design. So when I would approach films and be like, I want to work on your film, they'd be like, we don't have a budget for music, because things like Epidemic Sound and royalty-free audio all exist. So there was never really a budget for music. But the common question that I kept getting back was, well, we'll let you score our film if you can do the sound design and mixing for it. So I'm like, okay, I can do that, because I really wanted to work in music. So I started doing that and I kept doing that. And all of a sudden the work request came in more for the sound design and mixing side than it did the music. So I just slowly made the transition over into the dark side.
And just let me think 1 second.
Yeah.
So let me recoup before I missed something. So you did a degree in audio related to music, and you wanted to go into music, but then
Mhm.
the jobs turned out to be more sound design heavy because people didn't weren't able to pay you for the composition part, but they could pay you for the sound design work, and that's how you got into it. And the whole thing flipped over, and now you're doing mainly sound design as your main job. So
Basically.
do you still do music services also? Do you provide that?
Yeah, music is not something I provide anymore. I do it predominantly now just for fun. The problem with doing like music, like having a music heavy rig is um, the specs your system requires are drastically different.
Hmm.
You're looking at having RAIDs and multiple virtual machines and all that fun stuff. Where sound design is like more just like I have my computer, I have my IO card, and all the precious space is used. Like some sample libraries can go into like 40 gigs, but like some music sample libraries are like 350 gigs. So like they
Hmm.
eat up a lot of space. You need a lot more RAM. So I've kind of just cleared off my computer from all that stuff and now I'm focused on sound design and field recording.
And where in Canada are you located?
I'm just about 4 hours away from Vancouver, so I'm not super far away from there.
Yeah, West Coast basically, like
Yeah.
closer to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is yeah also a big hub for post-production and film production in general, right?
Nope.
No, it's more.
Vancouver is,
Yeah, I mean
yeah, so
Vancouver. I refer to Vancouver. Yeah,
yes. Yeah,
yeah.
Vancouver is quite big, but a lot of my work comes from out of province than within the province. I do get a lot of like in province work. It's a lot smaller work because if you want to get like the bigger stuff, you're looking at joining union based work,
Hmm.
and I'm not a union employee. So like if you want to work on things, what's the big show they're shooting now? Supergirl, I think is being shot in Vancouver at the moment. But that is a union project. You're not getting on unless you're on union.
Can you explain that a little bit further? Because I might understand that basically that either you're in the union, as you just said, or you're not in the union, and that also then you differ between job offers. And if you're in the union, you have certain amounts of day rates that you can apply to. And can you give us a little bit more of an overview over that?
Yeah, so I'm because I'm not a union employee, I don't know like all the ins and outs of it, but essentially it's if a show is working, they get a bunch of tax credits and a bunch of other all that other stuff if they go with the union. So they're more incentivized to hire union people. I might get subcontracted out. It's a big no-no. Shouldn't do that, but it does happen. Essentially, what would happen is a company would go ahead and give a project to another company. That company is either overloaded or can't take on the project, so then they'll subcontract out. So I'd end up trickling in that way. But typically, when that happens, you don't get credited.
I see. And you said you're not employed by the union, so that would be an actual employment contract with pension scheme, or how can I imagine that?
I may have used the wrong lingo there. So the union is more of a standardized way of work and standardized way of doing things,
Hmm.
and you have to apply to get into the union. So the union doesn't pay you themselves, but projects will go ahead and go to the union, and then the union will be like, "Here's a bunch of our resources, pick from these," and then they end up getting work on there. I may not know a lot about the union in terms of like to be able to talk it at a high level, but I believe that's how that works.
All
But I
right.
don't get on those like big shows because I'm not typically in union, so I kind of
So it's still
I get in other ways.
it's even a mystery to you then, in a way.
Yeah. The other side of the coin is like the work is super standardized. So like you have to do things a very certain way. So for example, if you're hired on the union to be a location sound person, that is your job on set. So if, for example, a buddy of mine that I'm also trying to get a lot of work for, he's a camera operator grip, but he's also really into location sound, and he really wants to transition into location sound. So on a bunch of the smaller shows, what he ends up doing is he ends up getting into location sound, but then he'll also help the camera and grip department. You can't do that in a union.
Mm.
If you're hired on to do location sound, that's your job, that's your role.
You
And
cannot,
then there's standardized rates too.
yeah. And is there also standard ways of how to, let's say, do post-production or dialogue editing, or do they just
Mhm.
yeah? Okay,
Yep, yeah.
interesting.
There's a standard. Whereas, like if you're doing things yourself, you can kind of go off the beaten path and try and experiment and have a little bit more fun with things.
Hmm. So maybe the last
From my
question,
end.
I don't want to exhaust this because you already said you're not an expert, but
No.
is it in a way, can I imagine it like I'm in the union and they have this pool of work, so being in the union means that you are generally will be never out of work, that they always will feed you with
Um,
projects?
you are promoted more
Mm,
in those projects. So it's not necessarily that they'll always feed you work, but for example, one of the resources that we're always missing in BC is location sound artists. So like field like people who just sit there, hold the mic, mix all the stuff. We're missing so many of those. So if you get in the union and you have your own kit, like a good kit, you won't be out of work.
mm,
There's always work because of the shortage. If you come in as a camera operator, there's there's a lot of those. So chances of you actually getting work, you have to compete with all the other camera operators. But if you come in as a location sound person, chances are you'll get work.
mm. So BC is British Columbia, right?
Yes.
And the union we're talking about, is this exclusively for Canada, or is it the overarching union for the whole America or North America?
I believe it's also in America too.
Hmm,
I don't know anywhere else outside of that, but I believe it's both U.S. and Canada, the
hmm.
Dev Union.
Combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. I mean, I'm coming from Europe, and these are all kind of those vague information about, yeah, I'm in the union, I'm not. I talked to several people, but still, I couldn't figure out anything proper. So now I know
I
a
have
little,
no idea either.
I know a little bit more now. Thank you. So,
Or a little less. I could be totally dead wrong in most of that stuff.
but
I
you
try to
already
avoid it because I don't like the hours.
mm, come again. I didn't get that.
I
You
try to avoid it because I don't like the hours.
you don't
So
like the hours. Okay.
I'm most creative in at night. So that's when I tend to do a lot of my own creative based work. But also I just work dumb hours. Like
So
I'll
you
wake up at like 8 and work till freaking 2 a.m.
so you also have to stick to the working hours the union provides.
Yes, there's not overtime needs to be approved, whereas mine is just like, well, I give out a day rate. So if I get a day rate and I can get it done in a short amount of time because I quoted 5 days, but I can get it done in three, I can get the 5 days done in three. So I end up billing more for a shorter amount of time.
Mm. So let me tell you how I found you, because I think it's so interesting all the stuff that you already provide in the internet. So I found your YouTube channel. You have some tutorials on there about sound design. I think they are very good. And there's not much stuff on the internet, so you're one of the very few people who provide knowledge like that in that form. I also saw you on Instagram, and then someone even cross-referenced you. I think someone texted me and said, "Yeah, there's this guy from Aftertouch Audio. I'm learning from him, and he said I should really check you out, and that's why I'm DMing you." So
Oh,
thank you
interesting.
for that.
No problem at all. I wonder if it was someone from my Discord.
So you have Discord as well. Um,
Yeah, I run a Discord channel as well.
and what is the mission of you doing all this education and Discord? Because I believe it is a lot of work, right?
It is. So unfortunately, because I got really, really busy over the last little bit, normally like the Christmas months tend to be, or like the months leading up to Christmas tend to be my busiest. I had to slow down dramatically on a lot of that stuff. Um, but the Discord stuff, like I've always been a big fan of education. I taught for a year and a half at a school, and that contract had ended for mostly just pay disputes. And I enjoyed teaching, and teaching was a lot of fun. So I thought, well, let's do a YouTube channel. But the YouTube channel was more of a challenge to my friend who wanted to do a YouTube channel. So it was more like a let's race to see who gets to 100 subscribers first. And he was doing a video a week, and I was doing a video every 2 weeks. And then I'm like, cool, I'm just going to keep going. I ended up getting to 100, and then 1,000, and then 2,000. I'm like, I'm just going to keep going with this because I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
And how many followers does the account have at the moment?
I think 13,000.
Hmm.
I think might be
That,
more.
that's substantial. I mean, for how long did you
15,400.
15,400, and for how long did you produce videos consecutively?
Um, I have a different esque philosophy on that. I think my first video that I posted was 2 years ago. Um, ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. Oh yeah, I posted a bunch of like small stuff back then. Back when I was still learning how to do all this stuff. Oh, all the ATO stuff. Cool. My first actual sound design video was 2020. So September 14th, 2020. That was my first actual sound design
Hmm.
like tutorial thing. So 4 years.
During COVID, basically, yeah.
Was that
Tw
when COVID was?
2019, yeah. I think it started 2019, and then it went.
Okay, cool. Well, I learned something new too.
Yeah, so I really admire this, and to me personally, I think that's really a great way to present yourself these days. I mean, not everyone obviously wants or can be a content creator. Um, Certainly, I like to do this. My intention is also to, get the knowledge about Foley out there. On the other hand, I see it as a self-promotion tool as well, because bringing up sound redesign reels or show reels or something like that, I think doesn't cut it anymore these days. So I recommend people
Yeah.
who ask me for advice always, if you want to do a show reel or something for your portfolio or for a job application, then put yourself into this picture. So let the people know who gonna look at your show reel, who you are as a person, and not only your sound design work or your, let's say, taste that you have in this. Because I think also from my own experience when I was looking into applications for Ubisoft, for example, my search process was really quick. I could decide very quickly after a couple of seconds, even if this application is interesting or not. And in a show reel that is longer than, I don't know, 90 seconds, I would already kind of have my biases. And then if it's just a redesign, even if it sounds great, I'm thinking like, yeah, okay, so what? Everyone I expect to be like really professional with their sound design if they want to work at a company like Ubisoft. Um, so what is your take on that self-promotion these days, and how to establish oneself in the sound industry?
I've gotten a lot of work from it. So a lot of bigger companies have reached out to me because they saw a video of mine and they liked it. So then they end up being like, "Oh, we were looking at on tutorials on how to do this stuff. We came across your video, we liked it. We're wondering if you can just do it." So I end up getting a lot of hires out that way. It's also just a really good aspect to learn. When people are going ahead and looking up YouTube tutorials, sometimes you get people that have like a lot of knowledge on the topic, and then they'll go ahead and either correct you in the comments, but then you can go ahead and learn from that stuff. As for the whole demo reel stuff, yeah, anything longer than 90 seconds is too long if you're sending it into a studio. It's got to be fairly short. Show only your best. You don't need any of the fluff. if you're applying for a Foley position, only show Foley. Like show that you can do Foley and do Foley well. If you're applying for weapon sound design, show weapons. Don't show a lot of other stuff,
Mm.
and then have a completed thing.
And do you also agree that it is useful to show up on camera yourself as a person, that people can understand how it feels, who you are, that they can envision how you would fit into the team just by looking at that video?
I think it. I don't think it gives you. Sorry, I don't think you lose any points by not having yourself on camera, but I think you gain a few extra points by being on camera. It was something that I did not want to do when I first started, and then I editing became a lot easier if you just showed your face on camera because you didn't have to cut B-roll over everything. Um, but yeah, I don't think you lose any points.
Mm.
I just think you gain a few extra bonus points by having your face and showing your personality on camera.
And how was your learning journey towards building your own company? You mentioned before we started the conversation here on the record that you are a lot about business at the moment. So can you give us a little introduction about how you started doing this and how you elevated in this craft of running your own business?
So in terms of, I can kind of break it down into two different sections. When I was learning about sound design specifically, um, I went to school for music. I maybe had one class on like sound design itself, but I mainly went in for music. So when I graduated and I was asked to do all this stuff, I didn't know anything about how a mix worked or really any of that stuff. So I had a few people I could talk to, but nothing like super substantial.
Mm.
But then I came up with a brilliant idea of hiring out someone to do my BGs. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pay this person out of my pocket to do my backgrounds for me. So I sent them the project, and they did the backgrounds, and I came back and I did a couple of other stuff. But then when I got the session back, I got to see everything like how a professional background works. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I would do the exact same thing to someone else, and I would pay out of my pocket to just get a session in and see. And that went with sound design, that went with Foley, that went with dialogue editing, that went with everything I could possibly do to figure it out. I would just go to the pros and be like, well, let me just dissect your session. You can't say that though, but I can go ahead and give them work, and then I get their session, and I'd be able to learn from that. So I learned in very unconventional ways. But that was a really big help just in terms of like how to organize stuff. I can't remember the buddy's channel, but he does stuff so different too. I literally have his thing up.
So while you look,
Um,
let me recoup. You started out somehow getting jobs. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that, how you got those jobs in the first place, that you were actually in a position of hiring other people, but not knowing the stuff, and then hiring out to other professionals who can then do the work for you so that you can learn from that session is really a clever move.
yeah,
How could you make it happen in the first place? Like where does someone get jobs from if they don't know how to do it?
you make them up. um,
The jobs, you make the jobs up.
yeah.
Interesting.
I did that once, and it worked out quite well. But I paid the person for what I was doing. But no, like I would often just get a project that didn't have a lot of budget, and I'd be like, well, I can go ahead and I can learn by going to school and paying a shitload of money, or what I can do is I can pay this person $1,500 to do a quick little BG edit, and then I get to see how they do it. But like it really depends. So like when I was learning dialogue editing, I would hire out person A, and they would deliver me things in a unique way. So I was working primarily on this like docu type stuff where they have like story A and story B going. So they
Hmm.
would organize the session into like these interview sections where it's all those interviews, and then there was another section of just like the main story, and I was divided into A and B. I'm like, that's a really unique way of working. I've never seen it that way. I've only ever seen it be checkerboarded before. So that's really unique. I like this workflow. I'm going to do that going forward. But then you find people like Thomas Boykin. He's worked on a ton of really cool stuff, and he organizes it by shots. So, like if you have a wide shot, he'll have the characters on that shot, and then if you have a close up, it'll be close up A, close up B, close up C. And it's like this is actually a really cool way of working too, because the noise profile changes depending on where your microphone is pointed. So, like that's a really cool way of doing it as well. So you just end up looking at a bunch of different people's workflows and you end up coming up with something that works for yourself.
Hmm.
Did I answer the question or did I go off into a rant?
No, 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 of course. This is the beginning of the question, I assume,
Okay.
because to me that already shows that you have also entrepreneurial qualities. Because as I understood, basically today, the difference between a freelancer and the entrepreneur is the entrepreneur hires out the work. If the entrepreneur does the work himself or herself or themselves, then it's a freelancer. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I understand you use that entrepreneurial framework to train yourself to be a freelancer. Is that correct?
Yes. I went
Very,
the other way, but yeah,
very cool.
I
Very
went.
cool. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really love this. This is something I think many people can learn from. I learn right now as we speak. And what came after that? I mean, you now are 10 years in the game. You have clients from your local British Columbia circle. You have other work coming from the US. You hire out work to other freelancers that you cannot handle yourself, also depending on the deadlines. Um,
Mhm.
I also understand that you produce sound effects libraries and sell those on your own website. So how does your business
That
model look?
became an accident.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So I was well into doing post sound, and then I started doing YouTube.
Hmm.
And one of the big things that I wanted to do was do a gun processing video. So I did one. Now, being in Canada, we don't have access to any of that stuff,
Mm.
or very little. Turns out we actually have access to a lot more, but regardless, someone had reached out, Aaron had reached out on my Instagram, because he had saw my video. He had recorded a session of, I think, 16 something guns that he wanted me to process because he was going to sell them on the Unreal store.
Okay.
And I'm like, I asked what budgets were and stuff like that. He's like, I don't really know. Just let me know what you think. So he sent me those files and I had to look at them. And I noticed that they're all recorded at 48 kilohertz, 16 bit.
Mm.
Like, why would you record them this way? It's like, well, that's the way that I have to deliver them to these stores. 44.1 16 bit is what he recorded them in.
Mm.
Like, well, you kind of limit yourself in the design phase. Like you can always export these after the fact. Um, and then I just asked him, it's like, how much did this 16 gun recording session cost you? And he's like, oh, it was like $2,000. I'm like, huh, want to do it again? I was like, I'll cover it if you want to do it again. I like the recordings that you got. Just like let me send you some equipment. Let me send you some microphones and recorders and stuff like that, and we'll kind of do a quick test run and we'll just see where this thing goes. Because I buy a lot of sound effects libraries. I don't think there's a gun library on the market that I don't own at this point. But like I know there's a little missing niche in this space that I'm like, I want to figure out how to do for my own stuff. So we ended up doing that, and then a year later, we were like, okay, this is actually a really cool thing. So then we launched a Kickstarter because I didn't have the funds to pour into this, but as it was something that I was really happy with. We were certainly getting there. The Kickstarter did almost double what we anticipated, and then we ended up just keep going and keep going. And then a 20 microphone session turned into a 25 microphone session, which now turned into a 32 microphone session, which is now looking like it's going to be into a 40 something microphone session. Um, yeah, so over the years, the whole library's just grown, but it really came by accident. It was just an opportunity was presented, and I'm like, well, in my entrepreneurialism brain, how do I maximize this opportunity rather than just be like, oh, this is cool. Let me process this, turn it around, and here you go. It's like, well, hold on. How can I get in on this?
So let me recoup. And so
There's a lot there.
you started out with this person that wanted to hire you and then offered the 2 grand for the doing the session again. And
Yeah.
you had those $2,000 at hand, so you could do it. That was the beginning. But then it evolved to be bigger and bigger sessions, and for those sessions you couldn't come up with the budget, so therefore you started a Kickstarter to
Hmm.
help with the funding.
Yep.
And how did you promote that? Where did the people come from that actually then contributed to this?
Discord and YouTube. So like because I did a lot of this stuff prior, right? I've already had an audience of I think 6,000 people or 8,000 people at the time. So it's like, frig, if I can just get 2% of those to donate to the Kickstarter, we can do the next big session. And that ended up well over exceeding what we ended up doing. And now we had an original target of I think 119 guns, and now it's well over 200, and we're going into 300 territory this year.
So you just keep doing this. And when with the budget, you then started to buy microphones, or how did you use this budget, if I may ask?
So everything that we end up making from the libraries, I have this mindset of just keep the Mr. Beast mindset of just keep reinvesting everything back into into it. We started with a bunch of relatively inexpensive microphones, AKG P170s, SM137s, and then I contributed two Neumann RSM 191s. Oh, sorry, two Neumann KRM 81 IMTs. It's a long freaking name. But we ended up using those for mech microphones. As we started getting more money in, we kept buying more microphones. So now we have Sennheiser 80, the 80 series or the 8000 series. We have a few of those.
So this is all in your back there, huh?
DPAs. No, that's just my stuff.
Okay.
My as this conversation kind of evolves, I'll kind of go into like more about the entrepreneurialism side of things. So that's not any of the gun recording stuff. I do have a really big rig that I will probably bring out in a second. I just got it. It's got the 200 kilohertz microphones on it and stuff like that. But anyways, the more money that came in, the more money I just spent on microphones and mixer recorders. I think we have 8 Mix Pre 10.2s now. And it just keeps going back into there. So now, once the gun project finishes, we can now pivot into doing vehicles, or we can pivot into doing helicopters and jets and tanks and explosives and all that, because we built up the big surplus from the gun stuff that now we can move into something else relatively quickly.
Very cool. So you have this huge stock of microphones and field recorders that you can use for producing sound libraries, but you could also do other stuff with that. For example, rent it out for a film production.
There you go. Yeah. So I have about 120 mics at this point.
Wow.
Just, yeah, about that. But
And that is all
I have,
paid. That is
yeah.
all your own.
Mhm.
And
I
how
have the kit in the States for doing the gun recording sessions. I have my own personal mic locker here. And then I have a location sound kit that we also rent out as well. So that's got a bunch of microphones on it and recorders and battery distribution systems and wireless microphones and all that fun stuff. So I have 3 main ways of making money that have nothing to do with audio post. And if you're going to get into the entrepreneurialism space, having more avenues that give you money really helps with the downtime. So like the film industry at the moment is in a bit of a dip. So having these other opportunities to kind of come and siphon money from it is really helpful.
and how do the Kickstart participants, yeah, gain from that? What's the deal there?
Ha. So, um, we did things a little differently than most other library creators. So essentially, if you buy the bundle, you get lifetime updates to the bundle. So if you bought it during the Kickstarter phase, you actually get access to all future libraries, which as I think it was significantly cheaper than it was now. And then we moved over to a selfie store. Um, the bundle was 2 grand, but we only planned to do 120 guns. And then we moved over to the site that we're on now. We had plans to do like over 200, and now we're about to launch the new site in January, where everything is going to go up to 300 something guns. So like the price of the bundle keeps increasing, but if you get in on it early enough, you end up maximizing what you end up getting at the end.
And it's a perpetual bundle. So you buy once and then you own the sounds, but you also get the updates for life.
Mhm. That's correct.
Another tricky question, which I'm a bit puzzled about. How do you manage your terms and conditions for this? Do you have a lawyer?
Ah, this is brand new. Um, so um, I currently have a lawyer, yes. I ended up finding a lawyer on YouTube, actually. Lawyer reacts to music TOS. So I found an entertainment lawyer, a top music attorney. Um, I found that she was just going through all the terms of services of different companies and showing how the terms of service were unfair to users. I really like what you do because she'll go ahead and uh, Splice, for example, was doing a bunch of shady stuff inside the terms of service, and she would just point that out as being like, "I want this fixed. This is not fair to the user." So I liked that mission statement. So I just reached out to her and was like, "Are you able to help me with my terms of service? I want to do something that's fair for everyone and all that fun stuff." So I think it only cost me like $800 to get terms of service drafted, and then
Really?
I think that's all it cost. I can't
And
quite
that is,
remember, but it's in that range.
hmm, yeah, maybe. Do you want to say the name?
Of the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and the person?
Yeah, a top music attorney. I can't remember her name.
He's new.
Okay.
Um,
Top music attorney.
yeah.
all these questions.
Oh,
These
there she
new
is.
songs are directly
I don't know if you can actually hear what I'm doing.
Yeah, I hear that.
Oh,
same
cool.
melody.
Lawyer of 10 years.
Oh, there she is.
Interpolates. What does that mean?
What's her name?
As a lawyer of 10 years.
Nope, it doesn't say it.
Yeah, we
Half the
can
reason why I
definitely
say, "Hi,
we
my
can
name is Tyler," at the beginning of every
we can
video.
we can put it into the description.
Yeah,
Um,
she's great. She did a wonderful, wonderful job on the terms of service. And it's a bit more robust than others. I don't even know if I can share my screen.
you could potentially I have to give you access to that.
Let me just bring up the new site because I did a funny with the terms of service, so I thought it was hilarious.
Now you can share.
WooCommerce, Element Market. Oh yeah, the other thing is if you're going to get into the sound effects business, it's good to do a little bit of like knowledge on web development too.
For distribution.
Yeah, learning about stuff like SEO really helps. Unfortunately, I do all that stuff myself, so like I don't have someone that I just hire out to learn because oh, that would be so helpful. Where is
I
it?
just saw a YouTube video about someone who explained how to use AI to create your own SEO search engine.
Yeah, ChatGPT for that stuff is fantastic. Big learning help. But for example, is it this one? Should be this one. This one, share. So, yes, allow. I think you can see that now.
Yes.
So like these are the terms of service. So like this is what she drafted up,
Hmm.
which I find is like it is all like legal speak, right? So like it's not super fun to do. So what I've done at the top was I just drafted like a quick QFA thing.
Mhm.
It's like, here's all the frequently asked questions.
Yeah,
And then at the very bottom, I gave away a cookie because thank you for getting through all that.
I like it. And
I thought it was funny.
and then you also have terms and conditions for your website in general, right?
Yep, that's all in here as well. Sales and promotional policy, subcontracts. I believe it's in here. Test terminally. Yeah, after the DMCA policy, general provisions. So like what we end up doing or what we end up doing with your data. I only collect an email address, so I don't actually collect anything other than an email address because I don't want to deal with like storing credit card information. And like, nope, just enter it every time you come in because I don't want to deal with it.
And what's the thinking behind doing your own sales and not put it on a sound effect or another platform like Gumroad, or you mentioned Unity Store, Meta Sounds, I don't know.
Eventually I'll get there. We had started doing it. The problem was, and this goes back to the whole like hiring people to learn how they do it thing.
Hmm.
When we first started launching libraries, I was brand new to it. I only had to do what like other people. I looked at what other people were doing, and then I basically did what they were doing. I found out that they weren't super happy with a bunch of stuff. So the more I learned, the more I ended up was like, well, how do I do more? So the problem with like launching your stuff on all these platforms is updating the stuff becomes insanely difficult. So we started launching on Sound and then stopped until we got what we were really happy with. So I think when the new website launches, we'll end up launching on a bunch of different other platforms as well. But you have to like custom curate your sounds for the platform. So if you're gonna launch an Unreal Engine, you should deliver them as not sausage files. You should deliver them as individual sound assets, and they shouldn't be the raw stuff. It should be the master stuff. But also, for example, on Unreal Engine, you can't, for example, launch a sound effects library that says AK-47. It has to be Assault Rifle 1.
Hmm.
You can't put brand name stuff on there. But like, I would look at what Boom was doing, and I would look at what Frank Breyer is doing, and I would look at what Poll was doing for all their metadata, and I would just copy what they were doing. And then as I started learning more about what metadata is and how to actually use it, we ended up finding some really cool things that were like, well, there's OpenTier. And this is one of those like super unsung. Can you still see the screen?
Yes.
So OpenTier was something that we only recently kind of figured out, and we launched it immediately because like this is such a cool thing. Essentially, what you can do with OpenTier is you can use these little categories here. If you go OpenTier, and I expand it down, I can go ahead and organize a library any way I want. So if I go into, for example, I'm looking for the shots, I'm looking for a semi-automatic weapon, I'm looking for a pistol, and I'm looking for a raw sounds, and I'm looking for a 45 caliber. Like, well, there's all the pistols that have a 45 caliber. Or if you're looking for an automatic weapon, and I want a rifle that shoots the raw sounds, I want to find one that shoots 5x39. It's like, okay, here's all those sounds. Then I can just click on the AK-12, and then there's all the raw shots for the AK-12.
So you do this
Or-
metadata curation on top of the UCS format.
Mhm. Yeah, so the UCS format is just these categories. Here's the cat ID, the category, subcategory, category full as well.
Hmm.
But that doesn't get as granular as you need it to. So for example, if you were to go into cat ID assign, there's all these categories here. But if you look at what we're using in terms of the gun stuff, which is all under this category, there's just antique, artillery, automatic, cannon, handle, high-tech mechanism, MISC, and then you get into pistol, rifle, shotgun, suppressed.
Hmm.
So like, well, that doesn't give me everything I need. So like, what about the LMGs and the SMGs? Like, how do I organize those? How do I organize them by caliber? So the OpenTier is a way to like supplement the UCS, because UCS is really helpful if you come here. And because I'm full screened, it's going to do that. If I go into guns, I can then go ahead and go into mechanism, and then all of the mechanism stuff now comes up. Like UCS is really good for that. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, mechanism, I'm really just looking for something that uses the 277 Fury. It's like, well, there's the gun that uses the 277 Fury, and there's all the mechanism sounds from that. It's like
Hmm.
you can use them both interchangeably.
Wow, man,
Really
this
long way of saying we're eventually going to be on a sound effects.
so this is really valuable. I mean, I haven't looked at SoundMiner for a long time because I'm doing Foley for almost 10 years now.
Yep.
Um, but before I was using it on a daily basis for many years. I even installed it for a couple of facilities, the server version, and so that we had it on
Yep.
all edit suites. I was in touch with, I think his name is Steve, right?
Hmm?
From yeah. So I know this very well, but I'm a bit outdated on it.
Justin.
And
Justin Dury. Or yeah, Justin.
Justin, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing this. And by the way, I just purchased the SoundMiner tutorials uh, from uh,
Tim?
from Tim Nielsen. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I was I was having them at Ubisoft before I left the company, but I could never
Hmm.
have the time to watch it while I was there. And then when I left the company, I also lost access. So now, as Tim was announcing that he might shut it down, I quickly took the
Oh,
opportunity and bought the stuff so that I have it. So yeah, this is a whole field that people
for
can
anyone
look.
who watches this, buy them because they're really good. I don't know why you would ever consider shutting them down. They're really good tutorials.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is insane. I mean, the value that he has on his website is also immense, and
Yeah.
the experience. So, for example, I'm using this little accelerometer that I can also show you here. Um,
Yeah.
and I learned that this one exists from Tim because he has this microphone tutorial about all his microphone collection and the different types that he has. So when I watched this, I saw like, okay, an accelerometer, interesting. And he even shared that he did a whole research around these tools and then found the right pieces because there you can choose between from hundreds of different types. So he found
Yes.
the right type to capture sound with, and that's how I ended up buying this for Ubisoft back in the days. And since again I'm not working there anymore, I had to buy my own one. Um,
Hmm.
and thanks to him, I'm in contact now with the sales engineer. So the guy actually made the effort, like the for Europe, the sales engineer. He came to my studio and brought a range of different accelerometers. So I
Yeah.
ended up buying a different one for myself because the one that
Yeah.
Tim recommended has a linear frequency response up to 20 kilohertz, which is
Yeah.
great. I mean, for a contact microphone, this is unseen, I would believe. Yeah. So combining the one that Tim
Hmm.
refers to with a geophone gives you like an insane amount of information just from contact. And as I'm doing Foley, and the thing was that the tricky thing with this 20 kilohertz version is a bit finicky. So the contact where you put the cable into the accelerometer, it got a
Hmm.
bit loose. The contact got loose, so I had some issues with this over time. And then the guy recommended, yeah, maybe you use this one because it's a bit more robust and it is linear up until 12 kilohertz. So for my type of use, that is more valuable to me. So I'm having this one now. And
Okay.
the whole topic that you bring up here with the sound effects and this whole business around it, I mean, you can ask Asbjørn about this. You know, you shouldn't go into this field if you don't know what you're doing. So you have to know what is missing. And you mentioned this as well that you were into guns and you own all the gun libraries, but then you realize, okay,
Oh,
I need something that is missing, and that was your angle to start this. And
yeah.
from that, you created something really valuable and also substantial. So this is not just a small library, as I understand now. This is like a full stack kind of thing that if you have this, you're basically set for life.
That's what I'm hoping it's going to be. But like it's supplementary, right? Like it'll never replace the Frank Bry libraries because they're so good. His tales are amazing.
Mm.
The boom stuff is also fantastic.
Hmm.
We just took a different angle with it. So we did the 32-bit float idea where it's like, well, the problem I was having with a bunch of other libraries was tail replacement. So like if you record in 24-bit, what ends up happening is the mech gets slammed into the actual shot itself. So one of the big feedbacks that we got when we first told people we were doing this was, why are you recording so many AKs? They all sound the same.
Mm.
I'm like, they really don't though. So like I didn't quite know what they were saying. And then we started actually recording them, and it's like, no, it's like actually if you look at just the mech layer, they all sound relatively different. Like especially when you factor in fire rate, they sound drastically different. But the thing that people were kind of coming up with is like when you sampled a bunch of AKs at 24-bit, the shot layer got compressed into the mech so much that yes, the shots all sound identical because they're all using the same caliber and the same muzzle or the same barrel length, so they all sound really similar. But if you can isolate the mech layer using shotguns that are pointed like this, like away from the actual muzzle of the guns, like they all sound really different.
This is really mind blowing. I mean, I'm missing a lot of terms from the
Yeah.
weapons in English, but maybe even in German, I wouldn't know all those terms. So you're definitely an expert in this. But I think people get the picture of that there are different sounds coming from the gun, and there's the tail, obviously, and there's the first impact. Do you want to share anything else that is relevant for gun sounds or recordings?
Uh, there's a lot of really cool stuff out there. And not only that, we also wanted to have more suppressor options. So we actually built custom suppressors for a couple of guns that couldn't take a suppressor. So that was super fun. But now we're in this whole world of just like experimenting with stuff and trying new things and just seeing what's coming up new. We just did a recording session last night. So I'm just now going through all those sounds, and they're really cool.
You say you go through those sounds. To me, this is a very intricate part of the whole process, huh? The editing and the metadata, yeah, insertion, how you want to ever call this. So, is there a chance that you get lost in that process? So you record so many sounds that you're just overwhelmed and you don't know how to ever edit this and make a product out of that?
So at the start, absolutely. But because we've done now like well over 200 guns, it's like it becomes a pretty quick way to do it.
Hmm.
You know what you're looking for when you're in RX, what shouldn't be there, what should be there. So we painstakingly remove every shell drop. So once you start going through 28 channels of audio, removing shell drops from them all, it becomes just a mind-numbing task to just get it done type thing.
Hmm.
But because we deliver all the sounds raw, there's not like a huge amount of like it's a lot of work to go through it, but it's not like a Matthias Chalot, I believe that's how you say his name, level of thing where he records with a bunch of microphones but delivers you a really cool designed asset at the end of it.
Hmm.
Where we deliver you the raw assets, so that way you can actually go ahead and design your own stuff. But we do all the small work of removing the bullet shells, so that way you don't have to do them for every single time you open up a project.
So just to summarize this for people who are starting out, this to me shows that there is only one way to succeed in audio, but maybe in everything in life. You just have to commit yourself and you have to get the work done.
Just do it.
I mean,
Just do it.
this looks like an insane amount of hours you put into this, just not only recording it, editing it, getting better at it, finding a workflow to be more efficient. So this is not a process that you just start and then after, I don't know, 90 days you know all about it. It's like something that you have to develop and be consistent over years so that you
Mm-hmm.
get to that level that you are right now. So I mean, but on the other hand, to me, a time period of 10 years, what you just mentioned since you started out, is not too long for everything that you achieved. So that's the other side of the coin. If you are consistent, you can do a lot of things within a decade.
That you absolutely can. So when we first started sampling, we did our 20 microphone setup. I'm trying to find one library that has it. Um, I'm sure if I just do it the way that I want to do it, I'll figure it out. But essentially, we did our 20 microphone setup and we were happy with that. And then once we moved up to the 32 microphone setup, we're like, oh, we want to redo a lot of our old libraries now because we're doing attached mics now, and these are cool.
Hmm.
We got reached out by a big game studio that was like, you should actually go ahead and put a DPA on your gun. I'm like, we never really thought about that. Like I've seen a bunch of other companies do that, but I've also seen where they're putting their microphones like they're really far away. Like our microphones are like almost touching the gun. So like like I don't understand the point. And then they reached out later on and was like, "Oh, I did not realize you had your Neumanns that close." I'm like, yeah, they're really close. But the idea was to put a DPA microphone just before the ejection port and just after the ejection port, so that way you get the hammer slamming back and slamming forward. I'm like, that's a cool idea. So when we did that, we loved the sound so much. We're like, we're going back and recording a bunch of guns that we've already done because this is cool. Like we're really, really, really happy with it. I know
Mhm.
it was an MP. I know we did it with an MP5 library, possibly. The Armory bundle. Go back. I need to go into this one. SMGs. I know there's one library that we did, or there's not one. There's like four. MP5A2, MP5A1, maybe. Anyways, we went back and sampled the same guns twice with the new mics,
Mhm.
and we just combined it into one library so you get the old one and the new one. And we're doing that with our AKs. We're doing that with all that stuff because as you learn more microphone options and more microphone placements and mastering and stuff like that, you're like, well, now I want to go back and do it again because I
Yeah, yeah.
like the sound better.
Thank you very much for sharing this. So for me, it is just the dedication behind this and the love for the craft. You definitely get that even through this whole like online thing here, that you really are passionate about the product that you're making and you're very knowledgeable about it and you're never shy to redo
Learn.
stuff and become better at that. So thank you for showing this, and I hope people who listen to that and are interested in that can motivate themselves through your example, because what you achieved here is really outstanding.
You might actually like this. 1 second. I'll go get it. Not tangle myself.
So while he's getting the stuff, I just want to ask you, please subscribe to the channel and also share this with your friends who are interested in audio, post-production, game audio, and all these things, Foley and whatnot. Please subscribe to the channel and also comment below what you find interesting, what we could do better, because we're just starting out on the journey. And yeah, so what did you bring? Maybe you can unshare your screen that we see a little bit more. Now, here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, I
This,
saw I saw this already on some of your channels.
yeah. So this is the new thing. This is the really, really fun stuff. So essentially what we got going on here, and this was coming from like an extra Foley pack type thing. So we're going out to Nevada to just do gun handling. So for all the Foley stuff. But this rig took forever to figure out how to build. But essentially, what it is it's using tri-orbit what's it called? The microphone stands.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but essentially all of these arms um, can just be removed into like their own independent rig, and
Hmm.
then this can be attached on its own microphone stand. This whole piece in the middle comes right off, and you can put like you can transport the whole thing as its own unit. But essentially, we have an 8050 which we've been using quite a bit. We have the Sanka 200K, and then these Matthias Chalot, I believe that's how you say his name. These are the 200 kilohertz microphones.
Hmm.
So like when you were talking about accelerometers and like learning from
Tim Nielsen.
Tim,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, well, it's like we learn from everyone, right? Like everyone who makes content, you just want to absorb as much as you can. So when he was showing us how he uses these 200 kilohertz microphones, like, well, I want in on that. How do I get those? I'm just now starting to use these guys and trying to figure out how these guys work.
So
They're a
you
lot of fun.
you refer to Mattia from Mattia Coletti?
Wow, yeah, that guy. I
Yeah.
definitely pronounced his name wrong then.
I'm also not sure about the surname, but I worked with him a couple of years on the Avatar game.
Yeah, really, really, really cool dude. I would have
Very,
never found these microphones.
very inspiring person. So if you ever think you are, I don't know, motivated or a pro or you're into audio, then just work with this guy. And then you see
Yeah,
your work ethic is nothing.
you'll be humbled right quick.
That's a better, yeah, you phrased it better. This guy is
His
insane.
libraries are so good, and the whole animal hyporealism stuff. Like, I bought all of his stuff, and then I'm like, well, as I'm going through and pitching things around, I'm like, man, these are real. I don't know how the hell he's doing it. And then he came out with the Tone Benders podcast on Cataclysm, where he was talking about these mics, and I'm like, oh, I want to learn about more. Like, that's really cool. I want to see what these things are all about. So I picked up a stereo set of them, and turns out they were originally for recording bats.
And how much does one of those cost?
Uh, 2,600 euros, I think.
Hmm.
I think.
So this rig, just let me sum up, it is around
Oh,
$15,000, $20,000 more.
so we have the because I think you work with the Sanka 200K too, right?
Yeah, I worked with it. I also had the CUX 100K, which I like better.
Yes. So there's the CMIT. So it's a DMS setup. Um, I think the whole thing in and of itself, 25, I think.
Hmm.
I lose count with it because I buy it because I love I love what I do and I just want to keep doing more stuff and trying new things and be like, well, what does this do? What does that work? The tri-orbit stuff is really cool, by the way.
And what is DMS? Double MS.
Yeah, double MS. So
Yeah.
it uses a uh you can do this with two cardioids, but I'm doing it with a shotgun in the center.
Hmm.
And then you have a figure eight microphone on the top, and then you have another either another shotgun or in this case I'm using a cardioid microphone in the back.
Hmm.
And then you can decode this into a 5-channel array,
Hmm.
or you can decode it into just doing a mid-side front or a mid-side back. You can decode it into XY. You can decode it into any format you actually want. You can use this with. So that's the center mic, and then you have this space pair ultrasonic concoction of the 80 series, and then the Sanken, and then I believe they're called CM. Where are they? CM. They're on the capsule. Where'd you go? CMP or CPM? CM16s.
CM16s. I have to look that up.
That's the mic capsule.
And then you need a body for that.
Yeah, so it does a 4-pin.
Hmm.
So the 4-pin goes into this little box here that decodes it, and then it comes out 3-pin.
Hmm. And have you tried the new Schoeps CM42
Wait, Sheps.
digital?
No, the digital stuff.
Yeah.
I have a set of those. I personally have not tried them. I end up buying a lot of gear that I never actually get my hands on. So they're predominantly used on location sound. So I don't get to play with them because they're always out.
You rent them out.
Yeah, so they're off being rented out quite often. So I don't ever get to play with them, unfortunately.
Because I'm looking into buying one of those for my Foley recordings. In terms of the high frequency stuff for sound design, I don't like the CO 100K too much because it's an
Why?
Omni.
Out of curiosity.
It's an Omni,
Yeah.
and therefore I get a lot of room information captured.
Yes. Yep.
And also don't like the noise floor of it.
No,
So
that's fair.
therefore I try to then switch to the CUX 100K, which is the same microphone
That's
with a,
this guy, right?
yeah,
Like the full diaphragm.
smaller, yeah, smaller, and it has
Okay, yeah.
a cardioid diaphragm,
Oh, that would help.
and it is
And
a
it's
little
100
bit
kilohertz
better.
too.
Yeah,
And it's 100 kilohertz. So that's cool.
it's a very rare microphone, so you don't find that like a lot, but you can buy it, and I like it better, definitely better than the CO 100K. And Mattia even commented on stuff that also did a little bit of Foley gun handling library for Ubisoft, and he once
Yeah.
listened to that and then got me the feedback that he actually is curious about why the CO 100K sounds that are recorded have so less like annoying transients with it. And I think my answer was I'm using the SPL Transient Designer, just
Yeah. Yep.
just on the recording as we go. I printed with that. So
Yep.
that was nice to get like a positive feedback because that is what was something that I did very early on when I started there. I just had a little booth of 11 square meters that was not purposed for Foley or sound effects. It was just more like a vocal booth. And in
Yep.
there, I did then a whole bunch of weapon handling library with some replicas that I bought. So
Yep.
not really like representative for any like battlefield kind of game, but in the end, this was my task, so I tried to deliver on it. And
Mhm.
then those guys in Sweden, Mattia and the others, they could access that because I made it for the Avatar game.
Yeah.
I don't know if they used a lot of that stuff, but at least I got this feedback that he was wondering about how I could do it with the CO 100K in a way that it has smooth transients. But maybe that's the whole thing about Foley, because Foley without smooth transients is just clicks.
Yeah. And that's all it is.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I struggle with too, was just like the performance of Foley. It's just like, there's so much to learn in all areas of sound.
Mm. Thank you very much for this conversation. We
Thank
took
you,
it
man. This is
from
fun.
we took it from your story that I'm still interested even more, like how you all like maybe grew up and what music was playing, what like how maybe let's finish like that. Like what were your like early touch points with sound and music, and what made you actually interested in that?
I've always loved the orchestra, the John Powell's, the How to Train Your Dragon scores, all that fun stuff. So I had a big asphyxiation with the orchestra, and then I my first major like job per se was working with 8DO, working on sample instruments there and working in their support. And I get to talk with Trolls Foreman quite a bit about music and stuff like that. So I learned a lot from my experience there. I learned web development from there. I learned all that fun stuff. So music was always that kind of fun thing that I enjoyed. But I listened to a lot of random shit, like
Mhm.
from pop music to heavy metal to Japanese core pop and all the like all random stuff.
Hmm.
It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, so the journey began with music.
Journey definitely began with music, and I still enjoy music. Current big trend at the moment is Tim Henson. All the cool people are named Tim.
What about
Polyphia.
Tim Henson?
Polyphia.
No, it
That's
doesn't.
the band I'm currently in on.
Okay, okay, I got you. I don't know it, but I understand. So
Like
yeah,
guitar instrumental stuff.
yeah, guitar
Yeah.
instrumental. Thank you very much again for sharing all this, displaying that by dedication and hard work you can achieve stuff. I'm really impressed to see what you have built within those 10 years. I mean, to me, it is just impressive, like how much you could do in this time and what you gathered around, like also the value of your business. Just the gear that you have is already worth a fortune, and you built that, yeah, just with dedication and proficiency and efficiency and persistence and whatnot. So this is really inspiring.
Blood,
Thank
sweat,
you.
and tears.
Blood, sweat, and tears. Exactly. Thank you very much. Oh my God, what an episode. Thank you very much for listening throughout the whole episode. I really appreciate it. I learned so much. We kept on talking after the episode for, I don't know, an hour, and I learned a lot more. Unfortunately, I didn't record this, but I'm just so hyped that we could have this discussion and that you see that people like Tyler, who is only 30 years old, could achieve within 10 years. I mean, it's insane. I'm so thankful that I could have this conversation, and hopefully you take something from that to your own career and find your way, what you can do, what you can contribute, what is missing out there. And thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed, then do it now. Share it, ask questions in the comments. And if you want to find a way to enter the industry, and the thing that is missing is your industry experience, then write me a DM about that. Comment in industry on Instagram or DM me industry, and then we can set up an individual one-on-one call and we can talk about your roadmap and your strategy. See you in the next video. Peace, the Foley Teacher.